We kept our promises for all the initiatives we had in schedule, and we succeeded in this achievement, and the prize is one of these achievements. Also without the fair, which is usually in November, December, this year we have worked with SENAF and the Fair of Bologna for our award, for our prize, which is a great competition. The cluster made it so important. So now I would like to share my screen so that we can see the opening slides. You'll see that how we're going to work this afternoon. For us, it doesn't make a difference if it is morning or afternoon. After the damages, which is an international academy developed by the Emilia-Romagna region with the reconstruction agency and the various provinces, Ferrara, Modena, Reggio, and Parma, in collaboration with MIBAT. So the presence of participants is very strong, very significant, and the Monument Authority of Reggio, Modena, Ferrara are representing us. And in July, there was a great contribution. I'm saying this with all those who are connected. After the damages is going to submit a new candidature for participation around the months of April, May, because if people want to participate, it is possible to register for 2021. Last year, we received something like 120 applications for a number of places that covered by the regional vouchers, so they were free of charge. We launched the candidatures at the beginning of the year. It's an opportunity to work together at the international level on the subjects of risk management, resilience, integrated policies, not only for management, but also for project presentation. Last year, for example, we had 30 nations from all over the world, 4 continents, so working groups of professionals worked together. So it was really a great opportunity. So please stay connected, and we have your emails registered, because our summer school of this level is organized by our region, but it is a national international event. The cluster built, and I'm the chairman of it, is an industrial organization with now about 100 members of different kinds, technologies, building systems, building businesses, spin-offs. So there are so many members and very interesting. And the cluster is the promoter, as we saw yesterday, of many initiatives, many funding initiatives involving the various professions, which are the stakeholders for the cluster. The Interreg Italy-Croatia is really important because Emilia-Romagna region received the assignment of this European tender, this European call. And through the management of security, there is this project called Fire Spill with a connection on many Italian regions, especially the regions involved in the last few years, with the Croatian counties And we are recording, registering prototypes, case studies on governance, where, especially about the subject of earthquakes and the seismic situation, we are having a number of innovations which can be exported, and we can work together at the international level. Digital and BIM is our theme, coordinated by the FAU of Bologna, which is the reference framework of our initiatives. So these are the 4 websites which are the reference of the subjects, because if you go to After the Damages, for example, you will find all the adventure of the summer school this year in July, and you will find the PDF file of more than 50 pages showing the content transfer of so many international lectures. The cluster build will allow you to enter in contact with the regional network. The Italy-Croatia website will show you the opportunity to understand this exchange of skills related to file the assignment of prototypes and models. If you're interested in the management, in risk management, please say it, because we are available. And Digital in BIM Italia is the website of the FAU of Bologna, where we have our competition, which, as I said before, we have 100 members. Today, I have this role mostly related to the summer school, because also mention our international school, and I am one of the directors with other colleagues of the summer school. You have from the Department of Architecture of the University of Ferrara, which is the leading partner of these initiatives for training and integration into development technological processes. The reconstruction agency, of course, is very important, because after the great experience of the earthquake in 2012,
il quadro di riferimento per esportare
for the reconstruction, it's a reference framework for real subjects in the summer school. People could enter the building sites, and there was a direct experience with the builders, with businesses, so it was a great opportunity to work together at the international level. So I ask you to join this reference framework, in which there is an interfocus. We're going to develop one also about digital systems and digital development, and this subject overlaps these content layers, and we can surf through European project development, international project development, and exchanges, especially in the technological field. And business development, which is a reference diagram in which we all have to work in the future. We cannot be isolated, as we've seen yesterday, maybe based on what we said, the future of training is an integrated future. For this reason, we can start our adventure, and we can talk about the sector of industry 4.0, which is the reference framework for many Italian industrial initiatives. The building sector, and I've always said as a president of one of the clusters, has absorbed the other production sectors, I have to say. Sometimes we're also under the umbrella of agri-food. So it's the last level of technological integration, but there are utilities, and there are the reasons why this happens it is not a cultural limitation, but because the building sector is a real estate, so investments and technological transfers is very slow, because technological transfer in sectors can be very difficult, but in the building sector you may need 20 years so that you have a reliable system in process testing, etc. We know that it takes a long time because there is also an amortization value for investments. Apart the length of the implementation of systems and the impact of technologies now is very important. So today there is this sector of recognition. Now, Cettina Santagati is a colleague from the University of Catania, Department of Civil Engineering and Architecture, together with Cecilia Bolognesi from the Politecnico School of Milan of the ABC department, are going to present this research. So we have Cettina this morning. Cecilia is going to talk about, on the 15th, about policies of the welfare policies. So I am very pleased to give the floor to our colleague Cettina Santagati and her presentation. Thank you, Professor Balzani, for inviting me to participate in this event. As Marcello was saying, my colleague Cecilia Bolognesi cannot participate today. Therefore, I would like to greet you all on her behalf, and I will do the presentation. My contribution about the impact of Industry 4.0 and BIM on the existing built heritage is inspired by the publishing project developed with Cecilia concerning the impact of this sector in the field of architecture. So I'm going to talk about the various topics and the various research groups, the research teams, and that work together with us. And my contribution aims at understanding also the challenges and opportunities we have now. I would like to start from the meaning of Industry 4.0 and how it can be developed and used in the field of building sector. When we talk about Industry 4.0, in general, we think of communication between machines and things, big data, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and decision-making support systems and mass systems. If we go back in time and we follow the timeline, we went from the first industrial revolution, so Industry 1.0, going back to the appearance of steam machines. Then in second industrial revolution with the appearance of electricity, assembly chains and mass production, and Industry 3.0. So the beginning of the data of Industry 3.0, there are two. One is 1947 with the invention of transistor in 1968. That's the period until 2011, when at the Fair of Hanover in Germany, the word of Industry 4.0 is used for the first time. And we are deeply into that. From the point of view of the building sector, Industry 4.0 is related to automatic prefabrication, computer-assisted production, virtual buildings and remote communication. As Professor Balzani was saying, the first consideration that we have to do is that activity in the building sector is very complex, and it is characterized by a different way of industrializing processes compared to the manufacturing industry, where this innovation can be disseminated more quickly. When we work on the existing building heritage, these differences are even more important. As Claudio Albertis was saying, we need a radical change in the model to abandon individualism between the various entities contributing, in the sector, and move to collaborative integration. Now, of course, these words make us think immediately about a change of paradigm in an approach where the way the different stakeholders speak to each other through a virtual representation of the study object on which we have to work. In which this model, which is a parameter model and a computer model, allows an exchange between the various entities also in real time. This approach, this BIM approach, now let's try to look at it from a different point of view within a longer process which leads to the definition of digital twin, in which the BIM approaches one of these steps that we can call them levels of maturity of the BIM. Also in this case, the concept of digital twin comes from the manufacturing industry. The digital twin word is created by Griggs in 2002. Here I chose one of the best definitions, in my opinion, of a digital twin. So it's a dynamic virtual representation of a physical object or system across its life cycle using real-time data to enable understanding, learning, and reasoning. There are recent studies trying to make this parallel, this connection between digital BIM in the manufacturing system and in the implementation in the sector, in the building sector. Specifically, Simon Evans identified 6 levels of maturity. So it is from level 0 that we started developing with the first laser scanners, what we call reality captures. And then a level 1 in which I can create these analogs of reality through bi-dimensional representations or 3D models, which are not yet provided with intelligence, they're not parametrical, they don't have metadata, they don't have information attached, until we reach model 2, which is the BIM model, where the model is connected with data, but these data are static data, which means they're coming from the various information and previous historical investigations, diagnostic investigations, talking about the history of the object on which we work, and then we move on to level 3, where we work with sensors. So the model is updated with data, not in real time, it's impossible to do it in real time, because of technological limits, but so it's almost real time. And then there is a level 4 in which we have this correspondence between what happens in real time and what happens in the model until we reach the last model identified, in which we also have artificial intelligence techniques in which the model itself works independently and autonomously, proposing on the basis of the previous activities through machine learning or e-learning algorithms, so proposing solutions. Now, the importance of the digital development of the existing building heritage is something that we all know. Last but not least, the disaster of the fire Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris made us understand that only through a digital system we can preserve even also the memory of a place, of our heritage, which is continuously exposed to risks of any kind, including climate change. In the case of Notre Dame, there was a fire that destroyed a part of the building and the history of the building. So the problem of memory conservation, but also a tool to become the basis for implementing a number of documents, management of conservation projects, etc. When we talk about the next step, which is from the digital development to the use of a parameter model, which has information from the geometrical and information point of view, we often talk about HBIM. HBIM can refer to both historical BIM, so historical heritage, or the existing heritage, which don't have a high historical value. There is no cultural need for conservation, but it exists. It is maintained, renovated, restructured, etc. When we work in the field of HBIM, both historical and heritage existing, one of the issues, and we're going to see the various topics that are still open, one of the issues concerns the interoperability, which should be, in theory, a fluid passage with no loss of information between two systems, in which, for us, both in the field of project development and the context of intervention in the existing systems, if I've done an acquisition through, laser scanner or the approach of these techniques, and then moving to the model, and then moving to additional investigations, all these passages involve sometimes, because of technological barriers, this means the loss of data in the workflow that we should limit in order to obtain products which, from the beginning to the end of the process, are controlled, are checked. Another crucial aspect concerns semantics and ontologies. Some time ago, I could see that Federica Maietti was connected. These are a few pictures from research of the European project Inception. When we acquired, and please remember level 0 reality capture, to giving intelligence to our models, a cloud of dots contains no information about semantics, so it's a number of different points, different dots, in which we give a meaning, both during modeling and during reporting. One of the objectives, one of the challenges of several research teams is to work on semantics, therefore on recognizing within a model the different parts, the hierarchies and the relationships, to be able to achieve the layers, so-called layers of knowledge, which overlap the various systems like the BIM to try and add this information. What is the problem? The problem is that often these efforts at some point find obstacles. They stop because there is then the problem of interoperability, etc. When there is a passage between platforms, chunks, parts of this information are lost. So we enriched our models through the example of semantics, but then these semantics can no longer be read when we move from a platform between platforms. Another important topic, and it is the direction we are following, is the artificial intelligence, in which through the use of neural networks and machine learning techniques, it is now possible and used in relation to the kind of problem we want to solve. It is possible to have a number of supports in the automatic development of the process we're working on. So, for example, they are very useful in the case of classification or in the creation, for example, of decision-making support systems, which somehow suggest solutions, for example, for the management of buildings or rooms, for example, within buildings. And going back to digital development, the models with no semantics, so we want to try and facilitate our job, because all experts know that the passage to the cloud of dots to a model which is semantically functional is very time consuming, and in this passage we can lose so many things. And also, we need a long time to create new libraries of historical buildings, etc. A research group working in the automatic development of the passage between the point cloud and an automatic division in parts of the cloud, so that already in the cloud there are parts and pieces that can be recognized, like columns, capitals, windows, walls, doors, etc. There is a mixed team, researchers from the Politecnico School of Turin, University of Ancona, and from the Bruno Kessler Foundation. And finally, all potentials related to virtual reality, augmented reality, and merged reality, where it is possible to use technology for simulation through virtual reality, by increasing their knowledge of real time through augmented reality, or in a system where real and virtual are mixed, it is possible to interact and handle shapes in the virtual reality but immersed in the real world for the project. These things will go towards the direction of use of historical heritage. Try to imagine restoration projects where it is possible to interact directly with the various solutions in simulation, as well as in the project, in the new project. Concerning these technologies, through time, there is a significant use of virtual reality techniques and augmented reality through our mobile devices. However, the trend is towards mixed reality. So these environments where real and virtual are contaminated more and more. I would like to conclude with a sentence from Stuart Brand, who said, "You can change human nature, but you can change tools. You can change techniques, and that way you can change civilization." In fact, this is true because we are in a system where technology has given us tools that are completely change our life and our way of working from the personal point of view and professional point of view. We are fully inside this, and we will go more and more towards this direction. Thank you, Cettina. Thank you very much. I can say that as I imagined this initial lecture with this significant research you developed with Cecilia, is a good framing for those who are coming later, because we have lectures from Paolo Odorizzi, who's already connected, and also to complete the report by Marco Labat is going to work on the subject of technology. So you see the many keywords that Cettina identified as a comparative reading in the concept of Industry 4.0 are going to be used today. So this is our objective, this is our target. Of course, what we said before, because I'm president of the cluster, so I can say we can make a test on the field, because the Industry 2.0 you were mentioning that wanted an industrialization of the building sector, we have not seen it yet. So the concept of industrialization, prefabricated industrialization, has been adapted in the last century in different ways, but it's not being able to enter the process of control as we wanted. So the integration of CTE, which is the great challenge of 4.0, is accelerating this time. And we'll ask Paolo Odorizzi to talk about in a different way. From data control, there is a new process that is changing our market. And the COVID year has been a very important year. And we will hear Harpaceas is a member of BILD. This company works in the Lombardy region. So we have members from other regions and we work together. It's important to work together on this. We've seen yesterday Fabio Germagnoli, who is the president of the cluster of Lombardy, participates in our work and our work together. So we must not have these borders, these limits. So we have to break limits. So I asked Paolo to enter the scenario of the standards, because standards is a difficult subject. The market of industrialization requires standards. And in the building sector, talking about standards has always been a problem. Sometimes even against the rules of the game. We know in the 1980s, there were so many controls about standards and performance. So now, from the general picture given by Cettina Santagati, I'll give you the floor, Paolo Odorizzi.
Everybody, I'm Paolo Odorizzi. I'm a technical director of Harpaceas. We are a private company engaging in mixing the world of technology users and technology producers. So we'll try to deal with this topic, which is innovation, digital innovation, trying to have a look at what are the elements to be considered. And we'll give you an overview of what we can already do today. So we're now presenting things that are already available. Thank you to the organizer for giving me the opportunity, especially Professor Balzani from the University of Ferrara. So I'll start off with a tribute to Professor Charles Eastman, who he has recently passed away. The reason I'm doing this is because his papers, for sure, were game changers in our industry and were very inspiring to people like me. For example, I remember some papers that are quite old, dating back to as early as 1997, 1975, 74. These were written using old typing machines. Those were times where talking about digital transformation was not that feasible, but Professor Eastman was already explaining the transitioning into digital models. So as you see from in this article, the use of computers instead of drawings and building design was paving the way to today's technology. So thank you again, Professor Eastman from the Georgia Institute in Atlanta, for starting off this process that has cascaded down in Europe and all over the world. So I'll move on to the next slide. And on this slide, I took this from the World Economic Forum, which is an international consulting company, which gives a picture of the best investments that could be made. So you can see modular prefabrication. So you see, it's got number one. Then augmented reality and virtualization. So what has been mentioned by Professor Santagati earlier, then the wireless monitoring and connected equipment, then virtual collaboration, and as you can see at the bottom right, building information modeling, which is number 10, but it's there. So these topics are to be dealt with, and today companies, both private and public, have the duty to focus on this and trying to improve in this field. In my presentation, I try to highlight the most meaningful things to me. First of all, we should consider methods, processes, and the policies to apply. So if we don't focus on procedures, we will never achieve good results out of technology. So in addition to this, we must use software technologies for sure, which is absolutely paramount. I would say obvious when we speak about digitization, but also we need to use software technologies that work side by side with hardware technologies. So we actually need to shift from software to the actual hands-on experience, so the construction side. And we need to do this using instruments that are quite tangible. Let's not forget the people. Yesterday we mentioned people a lot of times. We shouldn't take it for granted, but they're the main point here. So let's talk about methods. Maybe methods was not the right term. I meant laws, decree laws, standards, guidelines, and technical reports. We'll take a whole seminar to talk about them. But let's try to have a look at this. The Ministerial Decree 160, which provides for public administrations for developing a digital awareness, or raise their awareness to build capacity, to strengthen this capacity, and start doing things according to digital standards. Then we have technical standards, so-called technical standards. Harpaceas is a member of the UNI in helping drafting standards, for example, 11137 in use of BIM. But we also participate in technical tables of the 442 Committee of the CEN, where we develop similar standards at European level, and when we also collaborate with international ISOs. Standards are a good starting point to understanding how to behave and which context. Then there are also independent standards, such as building smart publications, for example. There are European guidelines, and I can suggest this manual for the introduction of BIM by public sector in Europe. You can find it on the internet, both in Italian and English. It includes rules that make you understand how to actually deal with procedural technological innovation the right way. And then there's tons of them. The ISO 19650 standards. These standards are quite close to the general instructions known as project management rules, but applied specifically to the construction industry. An interesting thing, an important one as well, is trying to be consistent with and trying to understand definitions. Today, when we deal with this topic, we need to understand the same thing when we talk about, for example, bridge asset or WBS or a cooperative environment. We need to understand the same thing. We need to be in line, on the same page. Otherwise, we wouldn't tap the full potential that we could achieve. Again, I would like to underline the idea that standards need to be the reference point to understand definitions. If we check these definitions on the internet, if you look up these definitions on the internet, we can find different ones. But if we look at technical standards, either international or national, we would find better definitions. So I would suggest to look up these acronyms, these names, these terms, and really understand what they're all about. Then there's a format issue. There are tons of formats to transfer information. And sometimes this is considered a more technical issue for experts, but it's paramount. The reason being open format or open BIM. There's a tendency today in understanding that it is very important to store data and transfer data using neutral formats that are detached from the technologies we use. I'm going to give you some reasons for this, but let me point out a very explicit statement contained in the business plan of the SEN TC 442, which includes the main guidelines of European digitalization experts in the construction industry. And here, to be extremely short, they said that in this document, BIM means always open BIM. So it couldn't be clearer than this. So BIM here always stands for open BIM, according to one of the most important documents issued in Europe. But why should we use open formats? For example, because they ensure quality and neutrality in validation. One of the golden rules in processes is that checkers need to have different checking tools from those who have generated the information. So this neutrality can only be achieved if data transfer occurs in a format that is available to everybody. Then there's the advantage of reusing data over time. So we're not depending on the version of software that was used to achieve the transfer data. So we have lower risks in terms of reusing data over time. So we can access this data for a longer time and more easily. Then there's a problem for the public administration, which is quite a problem for private parties, because when we issue and we set certain requirements to distribute contracts and assignments, it is quite important to make their instructions accessible to the broadest number of bidders possible. So we shouldn't set any limits. We shouldn't limit ourselves. And this can be achieved using open formats, because if you use proprietary formats, the risk is that we are limited in our choice. We are limited in working with certain excellent organizations and professionals. Then there's the problem of investments. So if the whole supply chains communicates using open formats, investments from the appointing partners and the appointed partners can be lower. So there can be savings because they will be able to choose the most effective technologies for them and use those technologies rather than investing money in useless stuff. And there's the data exchange issue, which I'm working on in a TC442 group. And I would like to give you this short concept. This is the process as I see it. These are a series of operations that are conceived by a person, transformed into digital format. And then this information is transferred using so-called digital tools. I don't know if sending emails can be considered as digital, but anyways, this information is reinterpreted, then they're checked, and then it is used. So now we should shift from this process to one that is known as machine-to-machine. So to simplify it, it means getting rid of certain steps. So we should make it as automatic as possible. So we should get rid of printing information, scanning them. We should use machines as much as possible. And by machine, I say network. Even in a bidirectional context, so with a query and an answer and a reply. This is not easy. So machine-to-machine communication is not just a service. It is an actual procedure that can minimize the risk of tampering and loss of data and misunderstanding, so that the process can actually be automated. Then we have the so-called collaborative procedures that we will talk about later. But once again, I wanted to highlight how it is important to organize the process. We do this with a lot of customers in Italy. We don't start immediately using technologies, software and hardware technologies. First, we analyze processes. Most of the times, these processes need to be adjusted. We cannot do new things with old processes. And this is true also. International rules say that. For example, we have so-called organizational information requirements. International rules talk about project information requirements. Then we have asset information model. We should get into more details on all these and read actually the standards. These standards provide exact directions. We should understand that it's an actual language. We should be able to understand that. So the ISO 19650, there are different versions of this, are an extremely good basis to deal with digital processes from a standard point of view. Now let's move to second element, which is software. So the first slide is about the need to merging towards the production of objects for constructions with designing. Often these two words do not communicate. Producers communicate about through their websites, through their catalogs, through their software, or a PDF. But we should be able to put these two words into communication in a more effective way. And this is what the CN is doing with a technical report called 17549, where a syntaxis is provided for transferring information. This would be the first time, one of the first times where the IFC is used without transferring graphics or pictures. You have the objects, you have parameters, you have information, but there are no graphic elements. Because sometimes you can transfer a catalog from a producer without using graphics.
C'è del testo così nella slide è più complicato per loro, scusami.
Senz'altro. Gli strumenti di collaborazione.
So talking about collaboration tools, they're gaining more and more importance, and they're about to become even more important than the so-called authoring tools, which are tools where models are created. As Erland Sand said, he's the BIM coordinator at the COWI. They're a huge construction company from Denmark. They make works all over Europe. So a collaboration tool is even more important. It is a tool where data is collected, shared, and disseminated. And they serve different companies, different actors in the process. They are useful to connect multiple people simultaneously. So the right verb for this type of software is collaborative tools, collaboration tools, where we can exchange information, not only through graphics. Of course, there's information behind this. So, we can connect people, data at the same time. So here you can see some examples of how these tools can be used. In particular, this is an absolutely widespread tool internationally. From my point of view, I've seen a lot of extremely positive reactions by those who have tried to use these tools. I think you should try to believe it. This is the strongest suggestion I can give you. This was shown by some use cases, some recent use cases where we were involved in directly, such as the construction model of the San Giorgio Bridge in Genova, where we were able to create an extremely detailed model of the project, and this allowed us, according to some of the people who participated in this, to meet the deadlines, the design deadlines, through sharing information the way I have just described. So we used digital technologies a lot, even the IFC format. And I would like to give you some more references. So about people who were involved in this. So these people said that these tools were highly precise so that we could work on different steps in a parallel way, so simultaneously. These results are real. We can't say that Italy is lagging behind anymore. This is proof that we have multiple references and examples of works made using these tools. So productivity and quality have increased thanks to these technologies. Another example I would like to give you is programs and products that control design. They can be tools to check models, so model checking tools, so something that is automatic, that checks the consistency, so if they're correct, if they're good, if they contain the data that they should contain. Maybe they don't provide design information. We leave this to designers, but for sure, they give a huge contribution and automatically to validating these models. Now I'm using Solibri, which is a Finnish software, very known software, useful for this. The checks are not limited to models. We also check regulations and standards. We also have to think about solving the drawing problem. I don't think we'll ever get rid of drawings, but let's think of some innovative ways. Have a look at this picture. Is it a drawing or is it a model? It's probably both of the things. Maybe it's a new way to represent information. Is it effective? I think so, yes, because it merges the positive elements of modeling with the positive elements of drawing. What about collaboration? Now collaboration is all over the place. As you can see in this slide, you should multiply the numbers you see here by thousands.
By thousand. e esprime che c'è un mondo in qualsiasi
These numbers show
che è assolutamente in contatto nella rete, che sta operando in questo momento in un contesto di data sharing contestuale. Questa è un'immagine che è relativa al software Tribal Connect, ma potrebbe essere relativa a molte altre applicazioni software. Poi abbiamo le device dove lavoriamo. Non esiste più soltanto il desktop, l'internet, il mobile, ma abbiamo queste device nuove, per esempio questo caschetto, che è un caschetto che permette di vedere sia la realtà del costruito, sia quella del costruendo, cioè quindi quella virtuale in fase di modifica, approvazione o inserimento. Quindi attraverso degli ologrammi che voi vedete attraverso noi, ne abbiamo uno tra l'altro nello studio, sono realtà già disponibili. Noi abbiamo già venduto i primi pezzi anche in Italia, quindi non solo cose solo americane. Abbiamo poi, sempre nel campo del software, delle grosse richieste da parte dei gestori delle infrastrutture. Qui vedete un'applicazione di un modello, che voi lo vedete attraverso un filmato, ma in realtà questo modello è editabile, cioè potrebbe essere attivato in maniera interattiva dagli utilizzatori, e che viene utilizzato sempre più spesso per le attività di stakeholder engagement, quindi della condivisione, della progettazione o degli interventi con la popolazione, con gli interessati in generale. Ecco, avere a disposizione questi digital twin, come vengono chiamati, per far comprendere le attività di modifica del territorio o del costruito, dà un grosso vantaggio. Se ne stanno accorgendo un po' tutti e sono in piena estensione. È molto importante quindi per chi ne ha bisogno appunto interessarsi a queste cose e provare a svilupparle, perché questa è l'innovazione che resisterà nel tempo. Lo abbiamo fatto anche noi di Harpaceas con questo breve esperimento presso una piazza di Milano, dove per conto del FOIM e del Comune di Milano abbiamo analizzato le problematiche di interventi di riqualificazione urbana, come questo intervento di rifacimento qua di una piazza dove ci sono tantissimi enti coinvolti, soprattutto anche per quanto riguarda ciò che sta sotto il livello del terreno, il cosiddetto ultimo miglio, quindi le connessioni terminali verso gli elementi edili. Abbiamo trovato dei grossissimi riscontri positivi, perché far comprendere le cose a gruppi e a discipline diverse, ci sono circa una trentina di enti interessati per fare questo intervento, che devono essere coinvolti, ascoltati, verificati prima di poter procedere. Far comprendere le cose attraverso questi strumenti effettivamente migliora la qualità.
It's actually extremely beneficial to quality. It avoids making mistakes and speeds up the processes. Then there's the blockchain issue. I took this from the ICE, this slide where we can see how using the blockchain we can actually activate this double check on information. So we try to use systems that self-validate, for example, payments using so-called smart contracts. So here I can match information from sensors and also information that were validated through the BIM. So again, this flows that we are proposing and we're dealing with the idea of extending them and implementing them, for sure will be extremely helpful in the very short terms in the most typical technological flows in the construction industry. Then there's the hardware. I'm going to be extremely quick on this because we're about to run out of time. There are tons of tools, surveying tools, also drones. We had our own experiences in Brescia, for example. We did a whole survey of quite insignificant building. It was actually a gym. So we renovated, refurbished this building. So we used the point cloud and the integration of the whole process of design. Here, there are all the RFID activities. So these tags that we can include in construction materials to track down materials. And again, this is something that should be analyzed better. We have these two wonderful machines. I'm not going to say a lot about them because maybe later in the day we will talk about them. These are new technologies. These are not that expensive. They're quite affordable. Here we can analyze the built heritage and mix the built heritage with the virtual things, virtual elements. So you can see an example of mixed reality. It can also be applied on the ground. So again, we're using a Trimble tool. So we can create models and see all the information available. These technologies are already available. There are some investors in Italy who have invested in this already. So for those who want to lead the trends in technology, these are extremely good perspectives. I wouldn't say that we should do as this guy from Boston Dynamics rather than a guy. I would say it's an animal. I'll leave you the website where you can look at this video. This is a promotional video. This is an ad. This tool is actually available. So that robot can transport surveying devices and work basically independently and on its own. It's quite expensive. It's powered by batteries. You should change battery after 1 hour work. It can open doors. So apart from this, maybe this cannot be achieved by everybody in a short time, but this gives us the idea of where we're going. It can carry 14 kilograms devices. We already talked about digital twins. Just a couple of experiments. One we did on the entrance of the train station in Milan, which is the one on the left. So as you can see, the features of a digital twin model is quite different. They're technically different, but they allow us to give a digital identity, a digital look to the building assets that we have on our territory. For sure, we're gonna see a lot more of these, as well as digital twins used by Annie in this case. This virtual model is used to instruct people who will be then sent to rigs, to all rigs, to make them understand and see what they will find on the rig, which, as you imagine, are quite tough to work on. We did our own experiences on digital twins. We're still doing our experiences. Here you can see the Samba project, which is aimed at creating digital twin models associated with sensors in buildings. We're running some experiments. We're starting to build with our partners, such as EU Center, that participated yesterday, to let the sensors, especially with the advent of 5G, to achieve a more human form, I would say. here, these are co-working rooms, I would say offices. So this is not a house, but these are rooms and spaces where having digital models is more and more important and requested, not only by the builders and the managers of the office, but also by the users. So the last slide, the second last slide, I would say, is like a recap of all the topics I covered, because many of the people that are following us could print this checklist, this slide, and see if they can find some topics that they can analyze or that they can dive into in depth. So here I tried to give some suggestions, but please consider the three pillars together. Do not deal with software only, for example. Do not deal with methods, for example. Don't just buy laser scanners if we don't know how to use them on a software level and how to manage them. So it is important to have an overall vision of technologies. So thank you. I would like to draw your attention on Harpaceas. If you want to get into more details, we're always available, and hopefully I gave you a quite general and interesting look about this topic. Thank you, Paolo. I would say it was an extremely useful contribution by you. So we are kind of getting deeper and deeper into this. As you saw, we're facing a constantly changing world. So although we're not an industrialized sector in terms of construction process, except for certain types of activities, I think thinking about buildings that are basically systems and installations, plans. But as we get into this new approach, we can have huge results and changes. I remember that yesterday Claudia Moro was talking about, and as Cettina said as well, how the whole historical heritage is struggling in using this approach. Yesterday I was reminding you how the definition of standards in terms of identity won't be easy. So telling what is the same, what is different when we talk about historical monuments will be tough. While we'll all agree on what a beam will be or a system will be, for sure, there's gonna be discussions about monuments and historical buildings. Yeah, it's gonna be trying to distinguish in a context of biodiversity. There's a lot of researchers who are working on this, and I'm talking to a lot of colleagues. That is a field where Italy can have a lot to say. If people like you, people who are being committed into the standardizing issue, and then there's the whole topic of technologies, and I'm thinking about, for example, the transfer bill. We need to define some protocols because technologies are increasing. We have more and more technologies. We're losing skills and professions. As we were discussing yesterday, the intelligence of technologies seems to be more important than the skills of the person using those technologies. So this issue of defining protocols that can validate data in order to be on the same page, so we can do very different things but using the same approach, that will be the huge challenge for us. ahead. So hopefully the clusters will play a role in this. You did an extraordinary job over the years. So now let's hear from the rest of the guys what they think about it. We have a lot of time. And the Digital and BIM Award gives us a picture of a research reality that is quite interesting, because we see where we're at, what are the changes that are being brought. So thank you, Paolo. Now, as you saw, we had two kind of introductory sessions to give a broad picture, and now we'll listen to several, I would say, vertical contributions. So we will include and frame the topic in a specific sector. I was told that we have problems with the colleagues from Brazil. I think we have network problems, but Daniela was able to connect and translate. I don't know if our Brazilian colleagues will be able to send in the materials. Now, according to schedule, Lucía Ramirez is going to speak. She's speaking from Valencia, and she's going to present the B projects about energy. So we're entering the energy efficiency issue. We're very happy to have you here with us.
Bene, allora, grazie innanzitutto per averci invitati a questo incontro. Mi chiamo Lucía Ramirez, sono architetto e lavoro per la Valencia Institute of Building in Spagna. Lavoro sul Dipartimento di Analisi e di Sviluppo e ovviamente lavoro con tanti altri colleghi, soprattutto architetti. Prima di tutto vorrei parlarvi un po' della mia organizzazione e
So, in our role as the innovation agency of the regional ministry, part of our work focuses on the participation in competitive research, innovation, education, and several multilateral cross-border cooperation projects. Specifically, IB has participated in about 30 projects of this type that approach the building sector from different perspectives. So just to give you a quick overview of our work, we could group the projects we work at under 4 specific categories. So in a general way, these categories could be like raising awareness and promoting the benefits of retrofitting among citizens, training professionals to improve the quality of construction, then generating tools to help professionals, and improving capacities and supporting public administrations. So during my intervention, I will focus on a project which belongs to this last category. And it is the BIP project, an acronym for BIM for energy efficiency in the public sector. So firstly, I would like to inform you that this project is being funded or developed under the framework of the ENI CDC MED program. So ENI CDC 2040-2020 is an instrument of the European Neighbourhood Policy. As you probably know, this European Neighbourhood Policy was established in 2004 with the aim of consolidating partnerships and mutual interests, let's say, between the extended EU area and other neighboring countries. So the strategic framework of the program is based on 4 thematic objectives and on 11 priorities. And it's kind of a contribution to the main socioeconomic and environmental challenges of the Mediterranean region. So this big project that I'm talking about is belonging specifically to the priority of supporting cost-effective and innovative energy renovations relevant to certain building types and climatic zones with a focus on public buildings. So as we all know, to fight climate change, we need a strong solidarity towards the most vulnerable countries to support and enhance their adaptability and their resilience. This target demands a decisive change in the building sector, which is still highly inefficient and which is responsible for, I guess, over 30% of gross energy consumption and CO2 emissions. Well, in this slide, you can see basic data of the BIM project, which began a little more than a year ago and which is financed under the previously explained E&I CBC MED program. And this project covers several sectors, and among them the cultural heritage one. As you may have seen in the previous slide, the leaders of the project are the Istituto di Scienze del Patrimonio Culturale of the CNR. In addition to the Instituto, the project consortium is made up of 7 other partners, each from a different country in the Mediterranean basin. In all the countries, pilot actions are being carried out through pilot historic buildings. And these pilots serve to test and implement the project outputs. So the central output of the project is the development of a methodology based on emerging ICT technologies and BIM. And this methodology will be tested on the public historic buildings, as I explained. And this could serve as an example for the private sector as well. The process is supposed to improve and speed up the energy requalification process and trigger a virtuous cycle in which the funds saved by this management of public assets should be reused to increase the interventions on the existing building stock. So the pilot actions in the project should contribute to an open, competitive digital market for construction, and they should encourage wider collaboration between the public and the private sectors for further action, let's say. The project will facilitate the wider introduction of BIM in the public sector and as a strategy. So the goal is to adopt an aligned framework for introducing BIM into the built environment. And this alignment should accelerate growth and support competitiveness on the construction sector, especially in small and medium businesses. To put it a little bit in context, it should be noted, as you may know, that the directive on the energy performance of buildings, with the aim of promoting the improvement of the energy performance of buildings, excluded, for example, protected buildings due to the difficulties in finding energy efficiency measures which were compatible with the values of the architectural, historical, and cultural heritage. Although it should be noted that the historical buildings tend to perform much better compared to most of the high energy consumption buildings made between the Second World War and the introduction of the first energy efficiency regulations. So, environmental planning is progressively, let's say, departing from a purely normative dimension of adaptation to one of improvement. And this is by, let's say, by embracing energy efficiency as a key strategy. And this is with the goal of the conservation of cultural assets. So, although, as already told before, also the BIM methodology is mainly applied to new constructions. It also allows to create, as you have also seen, virtual reconstructions, these digital twins and so on. And this is ruled by physical laws and by other laws or structures, let's say, called dimensions. So during the pilot actions that I explained before, not only the 3D model of the historic buildings will be developed, but also the dimensions of time, costs, and sustainability will also be integrated, let's say like the 4D, 5D, and 6D dimensions. And moreover, the correct implementation of this 6D HV model should lay the foundation of the 7D HV model, which is crucial for an efficient management of the building in the future. So through this technology, it will be possible to increase the efficiency of the building process. And these upgraded models that I was talking before will constitute an important asset, but not only for the documentation of the buildings, but also for the future possible management and for the realization of interventions. In fact, an UK study estimated cost savings of around 20% of the total project cost. So, as you all know, historic buildings are characterized by a lot of heterogeneous information that go beyond their physical or geometrical characteristics. And the consortium of the project, we will have the opportunity to test an innovative HVIM implementation on this type of buildings. So BIM seems capable of activating a new evolution on integrated and efficient management of the knowledge produced in the conservation process. And in fact, the application of these tools on historic buildings is still an experiment, is still in an experimental phase. And in the most successful cases of the integration that we will develop in the frame of the project will be studied, in fact, and maybe exploited and implemented within the BIP approach, which will be developed in the frame of the project. So, in addition, as Professor Santagati and Odorizzi already told, the interoperability between the models and the energy simulation software and so on is also being studied in this project. And the goal is that the methodology that will be developed will provide the public administration with a tool for the energy retrofitting of heritage buildings, which could also be used, and this is quite interesting, not only from the analysis phase, but also could serve for the financial plan. So, on the whole, we could say that the use of such a tool with this great potential could guarantee certain return of investment in the building sector. So this approach aims to improve the capacity of public institutions to develop sustainable energy policies and to attract funds by working on these cross-border case studies. So, by going further, private funds will ensure economic support through the instrument of energy performance contracting, which is based on the energy savings achieved from building energy efficiency renovations. So this EPC, or energy performance contracting, is a mechanism to secure energy efficiency renovation financing. So The EPC involves an ESCO, which is an energy service company, which provides various services such as financing and guaranteed energy savings. The ESCO profit depends on the achievement of the guaranteed savings, sure. And the ESCO keeps involved in the measurement and in the verification process for the energy savings during a period which is called the repayment period. This model of ESCOs and energy performance contracting are mostly used in the public sector and to a lesser extent in the industrial and commercial building sectors. So this slide shows like the BIM project workflow. In this scheme, it is underlined the centrality of the HBIM platform, which is central to a series of surveys, analysis, and simulations which are needed to produce design solutions. Despite all the partners on this project, depending on our level of competence, are carrying out some of the activities in the project in-house or through external consultancies, all the specific activities for this knowledge transfer and this capacity building are being planned and organized among all the consortium partners. So I was talking at the beginning of my presentation of all the pilot actions. And this is the Spanish pilot case, which is the Palacio de Calatayud in Valencia. It is a building complex which is located in the historical center of the city. It is currently in disuse, but it is to be fully refurbished because it's going to be used again for administrative use. And in fact, the renovation project is currently in the planning stage. And these are the rest of the pilot actions which are being carried out in the other countries of the other project partners. So all the different pilot actions are in a different process of development because of the coronavirus situation too. The steps for all of the pilot actions are mostly the same. Let's say that the first step is the development of the HBIM model, so the 4D, 5D, and 6D models. After the development of the models is an analysis of the environmental behavior and the energy consumption is being carried out. And then after this analysis, specific numerical simulations are also being carried out. And here we are also studying like the problems of interoperability and open formats and all the problems mentioned before. So all these three previous steps should be the basis for the development of the 70 HBIM models, which are crucial for an efficient management later on. And one of the main outputs expected is in this project is the confirmation of the usefulness of the BIM methodology in the evaluation of the return of the investment in the renovation. And this will be of great help as a support to the signing of EPC. So I just wanted to give you a global overview of the project, and I invite you to deepen in the work being carried out in the frame of the BIM project through the project's website, which you can see here. So that was my short global vision of the BIM project, and when you have any questions or comments, you can contact me through this address. So thank you for your attention.
Grazie Lucia. Vedete questo scambio di ricerca internazionale quanto è essenziale per la verifica anche dei livelli di competenza e le problematiche di confronto, soprattutto sul patrimonio storico, che è sempre un campo di applicazione difficile e complesso, come dicevamo prima con Paolo Odorizzi, come bene o male hanno tracciato anche i relatori di ieri. Inoltre la riqualificazione energetica del patrimonio storico è anche un confine tecnologico non facile ai fini della validazione della qualità, delle morfologie, delle consistenze, delle coerenze materiali, che è un altro tema complesso per il nostro continente, non soltanto per l'Italia, che è un po' ha un quadro di stratificazione storica particolarmente articolato. Quindi grazie Lucía, se vuoi lasciare la condivisione dello schermo, vedo che sei ancora condivisa con il tuo PowerPoint, con lo schema, in maniera tale che possiamo dare la parola a Alessandro Camiz. A questo punto, bravissimo, ti sei già collegato. Anticipiamo, ecco, continuiamo a avere dei problemi dal Brasile, sia per la traduzione, qualche volta Daniela Policella si stacca, ma anche con i colleghi abbiamo problemi di rete. Chiedo magari ad Alessandro di prendersi il tuo tempo anche per questa spiegazione. Non è detto che riusciamo a avere la relazione di Claudio Oliveira, poi la allegheremo magari ai documenti di scaricamento del nostro webinar.
Io sono pronto, se volete, quando volete.
Certo, no, ti volevo introdurre la ricerca, in questo caso siamo in un ambito ancora più verticalizzato.
In this case, we are in a specific part of the research, and we decided to include the experience of this research team, and Alessandro Camiz is a reference person for this in Istanbul, applied in Cyprus in a context of high historical archaeological value. Then you will see also how we will enter the subject of assigning these elements of language, of semantic language, as that Cettina was mentioning, Laura Moro was mentioning also yesterday, because rewriting formulas is essential, and geometrical references are just one of this quality, just some of this quality data, and then we need interpretation, exchange of information, and technologies can provide this information for understanding, for critical analysis. We were supposed to have 3 speakers from the University La Sapienza of Rome and the Monument Authority of Rome. However, Alessandro is going to speak, and he will take us into this very special dimension of a special context in Cyprus through a work of interpretation. And this is really a real interpretation of data, as we wanted to see in São Paulo, Brazil, in Modernist Building, to talk about this issue. Please.
Thank you. My name is Alessandro Camiz. I'm an associated professor at the University of Istanbul. I'm Italian. I graduated in Rome at the Sapienza University. So for 5 years, I was a professor in Cyprus, and I led the research center on heritage. And this work is something that we started when I was still in Cyprus. My collaborators is Marica Grifo from University of Rome, and also Alessandro Tedeschi, who's now at the Superintendence in Rome to Cultural Heritage. This is a multidisciplinary work in terms of surveying and also structural analysis. So now we're talking about Salamis in Cyprus. This is an archaeological area, quite large one, that was only partially excavated and reserved some really good surprise. So within the ruins of the calidarium of the old baths, you can see these voussoirs. They're about 60-80 centimeters by 50 centimeters. They're quite big. So we have this, what we call double chair. It was a presumably barrel vault that collapsed, as we discovered from the excavations, and it was laying there waiting for somebody to take care of that. So when I first visited that site, I was impressed by that type of vault, type of voussoirs, because these are two-chaired voussoirs. Because we just found one example in Egypt, but dating from the Ptolemaic age. So I'm going to translate this quote. This is a stratigraphic sequence created by the interpretation of the stratification of a site.
No, però I traduttori dall'italiano al portoghese seguono dall'italiano. E prenditi anche un po' più di tempo perché probabilmente i colleghi brasiliani salteranno, quindi se devi fare più lentamente, ecco, mi raccomando, perché fanno fatica. Grazie.
Bene, scusate per
I was trying to be slower. So a stratigraphic sequence is created by the interpretation of the stratification of a site according to the laws of superposition, original horizontality, and original continuity. So the principles of stratigraphy introduced a little more than 30 years ago by Harris should characterize modern excavations, but this is not happening always. We'll have a look at the history of archaeological excavations of this portion of Salamis. Then we'll show you a double survey we did, a terrestrial and an aerial survey, and then we will deal with the datation of this quite peculiar structure with double-chaired voussoirs using comparative comparison, and then finally we try to reconstruct the vault to try to understand its structural behavior. So I think you all know Cyprus. Salamis is in the north of Cyprus, in the so-called Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. This country is not recognized by the international community, but yet that's where the archaeological site is. So we need to document that. First, Salamis is an ancient town. It was pictured and represented in the Tabula Puntigeran in that position, and it appears is on all ancient maps, as you can see. But ancient geographers described the position, the location of this site in relationship to what is the current Famagusta city, with the name of Amakostos, and later Famagusta. The city of Salamis, according to the legend, was founded by descendants from Trojans, one of the Trojan descendants. So in the 8th century BC, it was destroyed and demolished several times by multiple earthquakes, and it existed until 1942, when quite a powerful earthquake destroyed completely and submerged it in sand, but it was rebuilt under the Constanta name. But we know that in the 11th century, the city was abandoned, and in the meantime, the settlement of Almauda was being constructed, which is today Famagusta or Magusa. But let's take take a closer look at this archaeological site. We're dealing with the gymnasium in this presentation. Hopefully you can see these images. So this gymnasium was excavated since late 800s, and then also in the 50s and 60s of the 20th century, and then it was also partially rebuilt. Some columns and statues were put back in their original place. We focused our attention on the baths of this complex. Our intention was to do the same for the gymnasium, but it wasn't possible yet. So let's have a closer look at these voussoirs. There are two types of voussoirs. One is double chaired in one sense, and the other one is double chair in the other sense. We presume that this one you see here, with a double chair only in one direction, this has double chair in two directions. So the first voussoir we think was from the ark, and the other, the second one, belonged to the vault. The first excavations were done in 1890, led by Murro. So the area of the gymnasium was discovered, and this was considered, this was attributed to be, was considered to be Jupiter temple, Zeus temple. So these are some pictures that were published in 1891. These pictures are quite interesting because they give us some indications on the stratigraphy. And I mean sand here that was being removed from the site was documented in pictures. But not only they described in words, they kind of described the stratigraphy. The first layer was compact, more compact than the second one. So they discovered two layers, they excavated out two layers of sand, and between these two layers there were fragments of marble. So these lines allow to recognize line interface between the two layers. The problem is that the excavations from the 1920s and 40s and 60s, and even some recent ones, gave no indications whatsoever about this stratigraphy. So the datation of the objects that were discovered that are usually used as indicators. So if we use a coin, we use that as a reference for dating other elements. So without having any elements and indications on the stratigraphy, we don't know if that coin was brought there at a later stage or not. Another indication that we have from this picture is that the position of the fallen columns during what we think was an earthquake. So by analyzing the pictures, you see the direction of collapse of columns, which is the same, and we'll need this information later on to understand the behavior of the structure after the earthquake from the 342. So the excavations made in the 60s brought to light the whole baths, which was hidden under 3 meters of sand. But as I was saying earlier, we have no information about the position of the things and the elements they found, nor the stratigraphy of the objects that were found. So datation was more complicated, and this is a case where British experts worked better than the archaeologists that excavated in the 1920s. So now we have the Calidarium here, which is the central area here, highlighted in red. That was the last area to be excavated. And at the bottom of this excavation, we found this collapsed vault. You see the voussoirs in the picture.
peso, la sospensura
clearly also the top of the calidarium had collapsed. The top was rebuilt during the excavations. Actually, the restoration and excavation works were not that disconnected. So Karagiorgis had discovered his fragments used as foundations of the columns that he attributed to an even earlier stage, the Hellenistic age. So according to Karagiorgis, this complex would have to be dated back to the Augustan age, when the first collapse happened. Then we went through multiple collapses and rebuilt. So we don't know how the last construction was carried out. So this is the first terrestrial photogrammetric survey. So we used the high-resolution digital cameras. The climate conditions were quite harsh. We had 50 degrees in the shadow in August. So this is when we did the first survey. We used self-produced targets to align images. We used the structure from motion software. As you can see here, the voussoirs of the first type aligned on the ground. So it looks like an arc, a collapsed arc. So we were able to build the point cloud from these pictures. You can see it here. So this first attempt, we tried to integrate GPS data as well. GPS data were collected using a GPS node with the camera. We tried to use that to relocate the pictures, but the GPS resolution was not appropriate. So from this first point cloud, we generated several elevations, several sections that were actually drawn by hand. And here you can see a map section. Well, why is this survey interesting? We wanted to give a day to the parts. We wanted to understand the use of this huge barrel vault made of this huge two-tiered voussoirs. So we extracted them data from the model. We tried to calibrate the quotas. In red you see it collapses, and in orange the original floors. Green you see collapsed parts, and in blue you see it's a circular furnace that was probably from the 5th, 6th century, that was built when the complex was maybe unused, and this furnace was used to make lime to rebuild the town in the 4th century. The second survey was run shortly after using a drone that was not a professional drone. We used the DJI Spark, but the advantage of this drone was that it could fly freely in Cyprus according to current regulations. If the drone weighs 300 grams, you can fly without a license. You just need an approval from in this case, the Ministry of Cultural Heritage to fly over the complex. We applied for that permission and we obtained that permission. So I have a short video here to have a tour of the area that quickly describes also the operations that were made.
Lo sentite l'audio?
Can you hear audio? Can you hear the sound?
Sì, sentiamo benissimo.
Si tratta di ammirarvi, sono intento, il riferimento all'operazione del
This area you hear is ammirarvi son intento, which is a handle area.
Scusate, mi sono scordato di dire che...
Sorry, I forgot to tell you that for the alignment, not actually the alignment, the metric data, we used direct measurements, we used the tape, so we measured the distance between the targets that we had used for alignment. And again, we generated a DEM, but not so accurate, neither in the gradation stratigraphy. And then we integrated the data coming from the aerial survey with the terrestrial survey. They had different dimensions because the drone was flying 30 meters in height. So the final resolution was not that accurate. So we overlapped this data. We needed to have a closer look at the boosters one by one to measure their surface, their evenness, their roughness. We had to understand if these were trapezoids or not, because in order to be part of a barrel vault, they were either assembled using mortar, and apparently they were assembled and bonded with mortar because we didn't find any irregularities. We also used an electronic caliper. So after the model, from the model we generated the maps. Now let's get to the datation. The existing literature attributes this complex to the reconstruction of this structure to the 4th century. So number 7 was the vault. You see the counter supports marked here, number 1. These are arches. These are rampant arches. But these probably date back to 4th, 5th, or 6th century. At this stage, the niches that you see in red were filled to strengthen the wall that had to bear a vault that was much heavier than the original cover for this reconstruction. So what's important about this is these vaults contained some mosaics. The most similar building are the Aphrodisia baths from the Adrian age, which have a similar structure, the central symmetry centered on the calidarium, the lateral rooms, the 2 lateral pools, as well as the gymnasium. Actually, this kind of baths are a hybrid between the Roman model of classical baths with the gymnasium Greek model, with this open colonnade. Some fragments and quotes speak about a probable reconstruction of the baths in the Trajan age. And another quote, an epigraph that speaks about reconstruction after the earthquake. This is a fragment of the epigraph coming from the Crepidarium. And this mentions some emperors. Somebody attributed this to Justinian and Theodore. The only stratigraphic data from the recent excavation is this drawing by Kathleen and Dikigoropoulos relating to the opposite side of the gymnasium, which shows, let's say, 2 layers of sand. And the fragments, they attributed the latest stage of the complex to 7th and 8th centuries. Although it is not clear how coins ended up there. They may have ended up there at a later stage. In red, you see the latest stage to support the vault. Kissel carried out a very detailed study on capitals and colonnade, attributed the latest capitals to the Justinian age. These capitals are from the pools, the swimming pools. These are the pools that, according to him, were rebuilt at that time, as well as the floor. Here, the niches that were infilled were reopened during the excavations, and we discovered some mosaics, as you can see, pictured by Musu, were unanimously attributed and dated back to the 3rd century, and it is clear that the vault was built after mosaics, because the closure of the niches is previous to the building of a vault. Such a big vault couldn't have been supported by that structure, so those niches need to be closed up. There are two descriptions of the earthquakes apparently were responsible for the destruction of this complex. The epicenters of those earthquakes up until the 12th century are from Lebanon and Syria. What's interesting about this is that each of these epicenters that you see here, if we connect it to the area of Salamis, it gives us what's called the prevalent acceleration phase. And I mentioned the fact that the columns of the gymnasium collapsed all in the same direction, as well as the vault itself. Let's see if I can show it again. So the vault collapsed in a clear direction, so much so that the arch, as you can see here, which probably was separating the vault from the apsid, collapsed in that direction. Of course, the prevailing acceleration during an earthquake is a statistical data, it's not a local data, but it can give us an idea of how the collapse occurred. Probably this could have happened from the Lebanon and Syria coasts. Those are the epicenters that were documented in literature. Now let's try to see how this vault worked. So it behaved structurally. We did a comparison between this comparison with other examples of chaired vaults, chaired barrel vaults. Most of the examples studied by Lancaster are single chaired. The Temple of Diana in Nîmes, for example, it's quite clear. But our voussoirs are two-chaired voussoirs, like those from the Praetorium of Kasralabat. So voussoirs of the Praetorium are dated back to 6th century, and we're not sure about the voussoirs we're dealing with. This Taposiris Magna is a bath site in Egypt, dating back to 2nd century, was studied by Fernet. And this shows 3 different types of two-chaired voussoirs, but the two-chairing of these voussoirs is monodirectional. So the voussoirs are assembled, are engaged using just a junction, not using a chairing. This is the Praetorium Alabia, again from the Justinian age. You see the chairing, but again, just in one direction. There are many examples of single chair voussoirs, and this is the detail that became a characteristic of the Islamic construction. Here, this is the vault as it was reconstructed. As you can see, the weight of the vault on the niche couldn't have worked. That's why the niches were tapped out in order to bear the weight of the vault. So the mosaic inside the niche is an indicator of that. So it shows that the vault was built after. And also the wall for sure was rebuilt after the tsunami. So again, this was rebuilt. And I have the impression, under the impression that it is clear to the eye. As we can see in this section, this is where the vault intersects, but the arch should be here at this level in order to support the structure. In the case of these arches, it's quite singular. As you can see, the voussoirs we tried to see if the measures the size of the voussoirs could be compatible with the vault. So this is how we think it worked. So they were joined in the direction of the arch, but also in the opposite direction. So they were probably formed like a fishbone structure. We were not able to clearly measure. We used an electronic caliper. We didn't find any significant deviations from the right angle, although voussoirs are full of holes, so the data was not certain and exact, but we assumed that the voussoirs were bonded with mortar. So on top of this arch of voussoirs, which was about 40 centimeter thick, we assumed there was like a cover in concrete, of which there's still a fragment on the ground on one of the voussoirs. As you can see, we try to rebuild graphically and try to show the different joining schemes and patterns of the voussoirs. The earthquake from the 342 probably caused an orthogonal acceleration, well, I would say parallel to the vault, had it collapsed, basically overturning the arch that was separating it from the apsid. So it almost was turned upside down. So it made the whole structure collapse, turning it to pieces. We don't know if that simultaneously to the earthquake, there was like a wave, a tsunami wave that filled this building with water up to the top. There were several more tsunamis until this area became a hill, and on top of that hill, I think the Guardian building was constructed. There was this little house on top of this hill. This work could be continuing in the future, provided there are enough resources. So dating buildings based on fragments that we found during excavations is quite dangerous because fragments can be moved, especially by people. So fragments can be brought from one place to another to turn them into lime. But only locating fragments into a specific strategic layer does not tell us about the date of the building. This work, this paper was probably published in English. Hopefully an Italian version will be published as well. And to conclude, I would like to give you the link of the Citizen Evolution Conference, Diachronic Transformations of Urban and Rural Settlements, that we organized in collaboration with After the Damages International Academy and many other partners. This is a one-week symposium where we invite all those who work in architecture, archaeology, and planning and designing to share their views on the topics that we're interested in. It is free. You don't have to pay anything to sign up. You just need to send in an abstract that needs to be approved by the scientific committee. This will be held in Istanbul, probably online, hopefully in a hybrid form. I will give you the link to the website. The conference will be in English. So to conclude, let me make some advertising, which is the dynamic research on urban morphology here in Istanbul, which tries to understand the transformations of buildings and urban tissues, not the building as it is in a certain moment, but as it transforms over time. So the project is a form of transformation. So we're interested in the history as well as in the project. Thank you, Alessandro. Also because you gave us a concrete example of digital technologies, and this is crucial to us. Because we need to make sure that all the technologies, all these new methodologies are applied actually. And most importantly, there has to be a brain behind it. So we need people that exploit these new technologies to create as you did, to make some surveys as you did. So the actual result of research was extremely valuable, especially when you need to go back in time, where actually data needs to be compared using multiple indicators. One only indicator is not enough. You need environmental, building, indicators, events. To me, your presentation was quite interesting. I'm talking to the colleagues who are listening. How would I have put this in relation to another case study from Brazil? Because one may wonder, why are you showing archaeology? I would have liked to show you how an innovative building by Artigas could be compared to Salamis over time, when technologies are applied in an effective way. Unfortunately, our Brazilian colleagues are struggling very much to connect. They don't have network. They're creating a video. They transferred that video, but we're not receiving that video yet. So we'll pass on the information to you. If I may, I wanted to add something. When I was looking at the final schedule, I said to myself, damn, I'm not talking about BIM. I should have presented another work that we did in collaboration with the University of Florence when we used photogrammetry, drones, to a castle in Cyprus, and on there we used BIM approach. So we had historical study, surveying, damage assessment.
Poi invece mi rendo conto che
But then I realized that this was much better, because the issue of how we use these instruments is who is using these instruments. So, okay, we have the best technologies in the world, but you have always somebody, an operator or multiple operators, in our case, even some students, who are actually handling these tools, these instruments. Most of the times, there are multiple instruments, so without the knowledge and skills of the operator or the researcher to use these technologies in a critical way and use them in order to achieve some results, the tools and instruments will be of no use without somebody who know how to use it. So much so that especially today, you see a lot of improvisation in digital technologies, but a drone is not enough to understand a stratigraphic unit or to draw an excavation project. You need much more. You need our skills, our expertise and experience. Let me say, multidisciplinarity. This work was done between historians, as I am, architects, and surveyors, surveying architects. So each and one of us contributed their own way, and we were able to achieve our results. So on one side, you have the skills of the operators, but also collaboration. Otherwise, these instruments will be of no use. I understand that besides the wonderful video and the enchanting music that you used, the example is perfect. Also because the relationship between shape and component is extremely important. If you look at the production line, in a production line, the relationship between form and component is one of the key elements in the process control methods. So this element that you translated and you transferred on a contemporary scale, when you transfer it back to the current building processes, it keeps the same problems.
So the same issues are kept, and it becomes more interesting because we don't have the information. And the digital system helps to integrate the digital systems to give added value of knowledge that we could obtain also in the past with a lot of time, watercolors, a lot of research, of course. People did it. We have beautiful archaeological drawings from the past, which would be impossible today from the point of view of work organization and the commitment and the work for a team. So thank you, Alessandro, for taking us to this dimension. Let me say one thing. Technologies change, but we are always the same. Our technologies are the future, they're not the past. We reversed the direction. So technologies change. Tomorrow we have new ones. So they change continuously, but we are always the same. So architects who build the walls are like us. Of course, we have additional technologies, but an architect is always an architect. And if we want to make a quotation, a few days ago, already beautiful essay that Eristrowski presented at the UN when there was a discussion about the racial discussion. So Levi-Strauss spoke, and he spoke about race and culture, of course, and Levi-Strauss proposed when everybody wanted to, I mean, they were expecting something specific, he proposed something different. He talked about the dimension of cultural biodiversity against the quality identities of human beings, because human beings were quite strange. It's always us, but with different representations, which should be understood. And this cultural evolution shows the presence of our species on the planet. I'm sorry we cannot compare with the Brazilian presentation. Now we have Marco Labate, who is referring now to Alessandro Camitz, because he talked about this subject in a critical way. I asked Marco Labate to talk about Trimble, also referring to the software. Marco is online. My webcam is not working. I'm sorry for that. So I asked Marco to close the session by talking and going back to the approach analyzed by everybody, because as you've seen, Cettina Santagati and Paolo Odorizzi and all the other speakers with Alessandro Camitz now have always talked about these tools. But always try to focus on something. Unfortunately, now we cannot talk about tools, but service methodologies and process integration, because instrumental vision was good until the beginning of the years 2000 to give us an idea that we had innovative technologies. But now the idea that there is something new every year, you know that there is a new one every year because business is necessary. Just like the case of cars, there is innovation related to patents, industrialization, marketing, etc. But I'm interested from a special observatory that you have in Trimble. And Trimble is close to cluster B for a number of visions that we're developing together for survey protocols. We have Geomax Hexagon, we have Trimble, and other multinational companies of technological production close to cluster B, because we are testing the idea of a methodological protocol and validation protocol, which would be now, with Odorizzi, something that our disciplines should do. And we can also connect a more evolved specialization of the survey, because this field now is quite complex and extended. So I would like to ask Marco, take the direction, share your screen, and bring us to this dimension, which is a communication dimension on the digital development of the channel. And then maybe we can say something, comparisons, and we can discuss. Can you see the screen? Can you see the presentation? Yes. Please speak slowly. Also because your subject is quite complex. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your introduction. First of all, I introduce myself. My name is Marco Labate. As Marcello Balzani said, I work for Spectra Trimble Italy in the 3D image division manager. As mentioned before, the main topic of this presentation is not about equipment. This is not meant to be the software either, to capture and process the data, unlike what we expect from those who use survey instruments. We start from a more important concept, in our opinion, which is, when we talk about digital transformation and digital integration in all sectors, not only in service, we talk about tools. We talk about the systems, the tools used to capture data. The most important part, if we think of what instruments do, is not only or mainly the tool, but what the tool does, which is capturing data, capturing information. So the point of view of this presentation, and the starting point of this presentation, are digital data. So what is captured and surveyed and measured by instruments. I would like to start from a video. You probably know it. It's a video showing quickly the evolution of a city, very recent city, which is Dubai. And this is the evolution of everything being the infrastructure of the city. We can see buildings, roads. Within the we can identify special services, other services, roads, etc., which characterize Dubai. And if you look carefully, this is the amount of data that this means. So Dubai was born from nothing and developed in this extension. What is the amount of digital data required to store all the information we want? We had some examples in archaeology. It's very interesting, where data acquisition is used to store and study all the information. In this specific case, like in the case of Dubai, this is even bigger from the point of view of information received. In fact, to date, information and contents is the new gold. So the value of specific information is like an exchange currency. This is what we exchange in the information we have. Let me give an example. This data, not very recent, in 2017, where the quantity of digital data produced in 2017, 90% of the data had been produced only in the last 2 years. So in 2 years, 2.5 billions of gigabytes of information had been produced. This is the memory of data, digital data in that period. And of course, this amount is increasing. So if we think of a city or anything related to a city, structures and infrastructures, and if we consider that based on a research carried out by the International Agency for Energy, 60% of current buildings would be used in 2050. And we can say the amount of information or data that we want to keep and keep them active until 2050, for example. I can give you an example. The need of a smart city. The need of a smart city requires detailed information going from simple smart shopping, as you can see, to smart building, to parking, to roads, to land register, to service management. All this information is added to the gigabytes that I was mentioning before. It's an accumulation of data, which is important for the information that they provide. What do we map? What do we capture? We capture everything, all the information, surface information. We were talking, for example, about buildings or industrial buildings, because if we think that everything we have above surface corresponds to something underground, so hidden assets, services or utilities needs to be mapped with different tools other than those that we have mentioned, like radars, for example, that can be connected. So now we have tools, we have solutions in mobile mapping to identify in the surface everything found, connecting to a georadar, and at the same time combine the same data to provide overall information of the city above surface and underground. This is done in a workflow of a digital model. You can talk about the BIM, but there is a sort of a difference given by the intervention of different stakeholders in this workflow. We have those who manage the project. There are operators, there are surveyors, and all of them act at different levels together, and they also act at different times. So, managing this information in the same flow is not easy because operators act at different time. In the BIM, for example, it is important to have information available to all the stakeholders in the best possible way for all of them. Also, with a continuous, consistent updating and correspondence. And all this for the creation of a digital twin. Continuous work to connect real with digital. So reproducing the world where we live. So we need to bring data from reality, acquire the data, manage the data, create a model, and through measurement solutions integrated with management solutions, software and modeling, bring it to digital. So we have this continuous exchange between the two worlds, between reality and digital. We can do it through workflows, different workflows. Here we have one, which is the BIM, where from the field, we can bring the data to the BIM management and then again to the field. I can explain it better subsequently and how to bring it to the field. And I invite you to look at this process where we start from the survey to the operational part in the field of earthing machinery in software management, shared also in the cloud through several sharing platforms, like the one we see in this picture is a Connect. Connect is a software, and we can share data in the cloud because data can be stored there, but also because those data can be available to different stakeholders at various levels. So we can update information, we can update systems, and then after the model, we can again see the digital model with the reality at the end of the process. This creates a continuous workflow of the BIM through integrated solutions, service solutions for management, and so management solutions and field monitoring. Through this, and by creating these workflows, we need to focus on a main factors. So anything surveyed, anything managed and modeled must be reliable. So we need to be able to have reliable data, since this data are collected and surveyed. So from the moment when data are managed and then managed on the field. In the choice of solutions to be used, here we have a scenario of tools. It is not my task to use, to talk about tools and instruments. We know them. We have laser scanners, we have drones. In the middle, we have mobile solutions on trolley or machine, integrated with laser scanners, IMUs, etc., to collect the data. On the right, we can find the software solutions, and we can see in the picture some solutions that can use a review and integrate the digital and virtual parts with the reality. So it's a continuous flow of integration of data through integrated survey solutions. This will be combined, as I said before, in the workflow for the BIM. This is integrated in a software. So the survey is done, as you can see on the left, and managed through softwares. Please consider that there are different software programs to do this at the same time. So the surveyor makes a survey, allows to manage data by the operator in an office, and then receive an update and an answer. So in real time, there is field office communication and office field communication. Simply, after this data are processed, it is possible to publish what is done and or not in the office. Customers, for example, want to while something is done, for example, a building site. The solution is what I said before. In the cloud, we have not only the survey, also the BIM model. It is visible. It can be used. And the possibility also to process it in other physical or virtual machines with different operators. So it's a continuous cycle of information, even more for the BIM part. All this allows to create a continuity between real, so which is what we have captured surveys, and what is virtual, model, digital, in our software platforms. But continuity is not limited to this stage, because there is another continuity that allows to go from what is real to what is modeled, and then bring digital to be reused with real. Of course, this is not clear probably, but we can see it with these graphics and then with these other examples. There is a real environment. We know that the real environment can be overlapped with an augmented reality. And so what is digital can be overlapped with the real data. So the world can be overlapped with something created virtually. On the other side, we have a world which is completely modeled, even with the imagination, with fantasy, as we see in the gaming sector. It's only virtual, and we want to create a real feeling. So a real environment which can bring to augmented virtuality, which is the opposite compared to augmented reality. So the two realities, so augmented and virtual realities, can be united in a mixed reality. These two worlds can meet, starting from a non-modeled world to a modeled world, and vice versa. We can do it with existing tools. when we talk about a survey, when we talk about data and information, this information can be used later, subsequently. The easiest part that we know is virtual reality. That we see here on the left, we have these viewers. We can see the non-real part, our videos, where we can fly, we can even fly or travel, and this substitutes the real environment with digital environment. We are really immersed in virtual reality. In the middle, we have the augmented reality, is the real environment where digital contents are overlapped. So it is possible to use the reality displayed to this talk about with the digital reality. And then we have the mixed reality where digital interacts with real and vice versa. So viewers are used, as you can see in this example, where on the right of this operator there is a real computer which allows the operator to manage anything that is anything being the model, like the BIM, and see in an office the services and utilities and interact with the controls as if he's managing a computer connected with the tools we were mentioning before. Anything being in the cloud where we can share anything happening in the field with those who are in the office. So we can go from a gaming reality to this reality. So we can have tools and viewers on the field to interact with the reality. As you can see, upright, we can interact. So we can see the virtual overlapped with the work site and see the facilities, see the walls, etc. So considering also the market, technologies are moving forward and they are being replaced one with the other. And at the end of the previous contribution, it was said that technologies change every year. So for those who, like me, started working in this sector 20 years ago now, we've seen technologies being updated every 5 years, like GPS and every 5 years. Today, laser scanners and other 3D tools are updated every year. Just like smartphones and computers upgrading is done every year, not every 5 years. So the market of production solutions and integrations of solutions with the environment required to work, like in the BIM, are very, very fast. This is the market situation in millions of euros in 2025. This is an estimate. This is what we estimate in 2025, where the gaming part, as you can see on the right, is going to be paired in terms of the amount in billions of euros in business by the production activity in the management through virtual data. So virtual data, virtual reality, augmented reality. As you can see, the fields is engineering, real estate, retail, military, education, etc. So in 5 years, this is how the use will be done in a specific field. Small difference to understand how important it is to work with augmented reality and mixed reality. In this diagram, we can see that virtual reality allows. So it started with the game, so we can play or work with one person at a time. So we cannot collaborate, which is against the idea of softwares and platforms that need to collaborate. It is not integrated. It is a solution to see the virtual part, but not the real part. Whereas the other two which is augmented reality and mixed reality, allow working together in the field, working together directly with the office, so anything being utilities, office utilities, and also to interact and update while we are working, so it's a continuous updating of information. Some fields of application. Here we can see some real cases where augmented reality was used in the constructions, the building, for example, for checks in building site or roads on the right in a modern architecture, for interior design, and on the right for environmental impact and the real estate part. And then for infrastructures, you were mentioning for the smart city, it is important to simulate a new power system. On the right, we can check utilities under the surface, and we can do it with augmented reality. Now, in conclusion, to make what I'm telling you more real, I will show you a couple of videos, the two activities. Activity with augmented reality and the other one with mixed reality. What you see now is a video made in our office. This is our new innovation center. It is a place where we receive our customers. This is now done. This is the augmented reality in the work site. Here we see a model of how our innovation center really is. So the operator is going into the work site, which is not like the model. On the left, the operator can create sections, and down below there is a transparency. Now the operator is going to work with transparency, and you can see the building site below. At present, this is how it looks like. So this is the final result. With sections, I can see how the various elements. So there is a real check, real control, while workers are working. And from central menu, this is possible to take to measure distances between objects, to calculate the layout, calculate surface areas and volumes. And now the operator is going to go inside and will go out and see the outside. Now we have another interesting work, which does not consider our normal work, but something interesting. It's a simulation, a company that assembles armatures. It was done by a non-expert operator. They all use HoloLens. As you can see, in the circular frame, they can see the model, how it should be built of the armature, and they just build it with no technical skills. They're of course supported by older operators, more experts. And here the operator can select and interact on what they're doing. They can also record and interact and work directly with the office. This is standard work. And this is the same operator with the viewer. As you can see, everything is real, but digital is perfectly overlapped. And the two interact because the viewer allows us to have two realities work together. So digital model with reality. This was done also in many other sectors. So the advantage was that non-experts operators with the HoloLens were 30% more productive and faster than the traditional activity. So you can say that we can use these viewers. We can include the building manuals, handbooks for IKEA, for example. But think of the opposite. What we can do in archaeology, we can find an archaeological site which is not, of course, complete. And then in the office we can model, or we can see, we can remodel a simulation of how it is done. There are virtual museums, and it can be done with the operator who goes on the archaeological site with HoloLens, and they can see the temple completely rebuilt with all its components, and then interact for other considerations with the data, the information, interact, so this information can be improved. This is a very important value at the end of a workflow of digital data. So in this case, for archaeology. So to conclude, the workflow in the digital process in all aspects, from the BIM to any other application, we go from tools, from any of these solutions, we go through modeling, software management, office management, and then we go to the field. I didn't tell you that in the central picture, anything that we do in the HoloLens in a building site can be done in an office. For example, it can be done in architecture, in the real estate, to check, for example, a building like this operator with specific software programs. But so in an office, it is possible to see 3D. This is not enough because updating goes back to the initial model, and so that information is continuously upgraded and improved. So this is the end of my contribution. Thank you for your attention.
Grazie a te, anche Carlo Bonanno, a cui avevo chiesto di darmi un riferimento per fare questa...
Thank you very much, Marco. Very nice. I mean, you really work together very, very well. You gave us this technological reference picture in the industrial context where you are, being a multinational company, in research proposals and technological transfer, because we are all realizing that much of what's going on is in the field of knowledge more than in application, because the knowledge models have been changed. And the interactions with e-learning in other industrial sectors. It's a new way to work in this system. Also consider another aspect, probably some of us are not considering. This is planned for people who were born in the digital environment. So people from my generation, although I brought laser scanner, there was a person who brought laser scanner here in Italy, but in reality, people who are just beginning to study engineering and architecture are children who were born in 2001, who are 19 and were born in 2001. So they will be in 5 years, they will be in this new situation. So it's understandable that this generation gap finds a solution in the future. Another aspect, and that is very interesting for me, which is also becoming like a mantra, which is a twin software, which is a representation of what we imagine. So the twin is a word that opens up the concept of identity. We would not want a twin, just to be clear, because if I tell you there is a twin there who does the same things that you're doing, we would not be really fine. So if my bed becomes intelligent, I don't go to sleep there. So a twin requires identity. So the difference was in the past between digital and real. The first lasers, they were not multinationals in the past. So we knew that what's going on now is going to happen. So to mix these two visions, because it's possible, we can mix virtual and real, so-called real, because real, we never have real, because this idea that we have real is a mistake. It's like data that we surveyors know it's not real. So offering reality as something certain is limiting, because reality is defined by a field of probability which coincides somehow with our idea of the purposes of information that we have in a specific application, in a specific field. So I don't want to change this important, this crucial idea of work. Otherwise, we give an idea that real exists and there is a twin of reality. No, there is an identity, selective identity, which is a mental model. So as you said, also the reality that we configure is a mental model. And this mental model is opened up with various systems to an innovative interpretation, can become an extraordinary stimulation for creativity and efficiency of work, but it could also become an extraordinary system that cancels the knowledge of operators. This is what we need to defend in the medical field. This border has been defended. We have no doctor completely cancelled by the technological approach. Probably even more, it's even more important now than in the past, and we need to keep it. So I'm saying this to all the colleagues still online. The future for us is really a challenge and challenging, and with many possibilities, but it is the time to defend ourselves on contents. So the subject of protocols is very important. As you said, the technologies are renewed annually, and this is how it should be, because this is part of a market. The sector of applied technologies, sometimes we invent technologies and then we want to know what they're used for. So it is credible that the technological corridor between these doors to open, and many times, often we get lost inside, and we can find inconsistencies in our field, in our professions. These borders will be less defended, and so we have to have our brains available. You made a beautiful example when you said that this would be very good in archaeology, as you said. So we're not far from the possibility to do this. If they were available, or a critical brain, this is extraordinary. If the brain is the brain of the ISIS, or the easy, with algorithms, and you press the buttons, just the buttons. So the risk is that we have tools that help us to be less intelligent. So we need to be careful with the main factor of technology for anything digital. It depends on the generations. There is a generation saying that usually people with gray hair, what can I do? How can I use it for? How can I use what every day what I do? And digital generation says, how can I use it? So that's why we need to interpret how we can use the technology. Technologies are created so that they are all useful in various sectors, like in 3D. Just, with iPhone says that there is the world inside in a phone. So give the right interpretation to the use of technology. Otherwise, the use of the technology is just reduced to our use. I think in the next years, the subject of this subject, which is a focal point for the whole world, if we talk about people moving from a place to another, if we talk about privacy, if we talk about COVID, the idea of identity, which is quite equivocal, is crucial. So the topic of identity is crucial also in our sector, and it will concern many aspects. For recognition, for understanding, as you said, this can create discrimination or recognition. You can see that this is going to be the focal topic, and the subject of the twin opens this possibility to think about. We must not we must not consider that solutions are formed on platforms. Platforms are nice, but they look flat. So all the known differences. I want to add one thing. I fully agree with what has been said today, to give priority to knowledge, skills, and man guiding technologies and machines. I didn't speak, but I think I give it for granted because it's crucial. Please consider that a professional has a work period of 30 years, when this person, 40 years, when this person will improve, and in these 40 years, technologies change 8 times. So it's important that we do not work with the technology of your generation that you keep for the entire life. We need to take advantage of what we have, of what's new. Generations we have in the future are used to technological metabolism, while we come from a generation. So I'm an architect who's been an architect for 20 years. I've seen everything. I've seen drawings, handmade drawings. I've experienced the entire evolution or any digitalization of our market. Then I decided to work on research. I'm still doing this. But that generation, you're right, Paolo, no engineer, no architect thought that there were 1 or 2 technological variations in his or her world. They started working, and they could finish working, and more or less what he had learned was more or less enough. So even the technological innovation we had in our offices was not so revolutionary. We didn't have big changes, many changes. This is impossible. Training, even in the university, in our universities, we need to have training packages in the courses, in our curricula, which are which are changed almost every year. We don't teach the same things every year. Okay, Marco, you can disconnect your screen. Okay, it's 5:30. I'm sorry for our Brazilian colleagues because it would be the alter ego of Alessandro Camis in archaeological communication. We wanted to show you a very important building, the architecture of the 20th century. We will do it. We do it in the future. We will involve our colleagues from the overseas, from America. So we will meet again on 15th December. It's going to be a long day because we have the whole morning in the Build BIM applied to our regional projects, where you will see what we are developing in our technological network to translate the specialization factors that you have all mentioned on a platform, and so to understand how some aspects that are given for granted can be understood, like structure, quality of materials, conservation aspects, morphology, etc. So it's quite a complex subject that we've seen somehow, and we are focusing on it as an application. Then we are going to work on the social aspect, as Paolo Odorizzi was saying. This is becoming a very important topic. The topic of what Paolo was talking about is also about welfare and social, who's entering the technologies in a very important way. So, people are again part of the digitalization process with communities. So we will discuss also about this aspect from the point of view of our subjects of the digitization of the existing subject, but also from the point of view of the clusters about regeneration of the market and the various social aspects converging in the second day. In the afternoon, we have our awards with our prizes. So on the 11th of December, if we're good, we'll have a list of the winners. We will not say what they've won. So the juries have already been involved to work on these 100 projects. We have many members of the jury around Italy with different skills and knowledge and qualifications. Each one of them will have an Excel spreadsheet. There will be a short list, and from this short list, the committee will give calibrated scores, and then we will have the awards and the prizes on the 15th. So we're not there, so we cannot even make applause. And then, of course, prizes will be given, awards will be given. So we're going to publish the winners of 2019 and give the best visibility. And we will close. So we invite you all to be there on the 15th of December in a couple of weeks. It's going to be a long day. Not everybody will be there for in the morning and afternoon. Everything will be recorded, or we'll give short videos of what we have been online. You will find it on Facebook, on the socials. We'll give maximum visibility to our 3 days. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the speakers who have been with us today with very, very interesting contributions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.